They also have cod tongue.
tongues. Yeah, that's weird.
Yeah, I know.
No, I would do cod tongues. Mr. Footlick.
Good afternoon, Chad.
Very good to see you.
Pleasure.
Yes, sir.
After a while.
Of course. We have a table here reserved. We have some hot tea, I think, coming.
Yeah, that would be nice.
Yeah. Is that your normal drink?
That's my normal drink.
Is that your normal afternoon, morning? What do you do?
Yeah, I've been drinking. I think I learned that in England. I mean, I spent a year in England, and I became very fond of tea.
Yeah.
And he knows because he brings it all the time.
Mr. Jalen.
This is Earl Grey. What
Thank
I
you, sir.
have in my apartment, which I drink in the morning, is a Bigelow, a brand of Bigelow that I like. Anyway, I'm not that fussy about the brand.
Yeah. Tell me about some of your favorite experiences.
I'm going to tell you right off the bat that I know absolutely when my greatest dinner I've ever had in my life. We were in Paris, and we were going to Burgundy, and at a restaurant they said, go to a village called Chagny, and there's a restaurant called La Massoise, and you go in, you're greeted by a host in black tie who takes you to a small room, and you discuss the menu for 15 or 20 minutes. You have this long discussion about the menu, and you've chosen what you want, and then you go to dinner, and we had this wonderful dinner, and I will tell you one more story about it. My wife is not that big an eater. We finished, and they bring the platter of cheese, right at the end.
Yeah.
So she looks at it and she says, oh my goodness, I would love this, but I'm so full. Captain says, fine, goes off, comes back with 6 or 8 little blue boxes. They look like Tiffany boxes, all tapped up and ribbon, and they all have cheese in it. And we bought a beignet, and we had lunch with that cheese for the next 3 or 4 days.
Yeah.
And that was a great dinner, the best dinner I ever had.
What was it? What were some of the dishes? What was the favorite thing?
I don't even remember exactly what all the dishes were. I just remember it was a great dinner. I'm sorry.
Just the experience. That's the best way about it. They say that same thing about like good wine or good bourbon as well. You don't necessarily remember the taste of it. You remember what it was like when you were drinking it.
The experience.
Oh, Jalen, what do we have here?
Octopus on a bed of avocado mousse with a succotash as well. So in that, we have some cherry tomatoes, corn, as well as okra. And for this one right here, this is our asparagus, topped with some microgreens, as well as a orange aioli.
Thank you, Jalen. Would you like a taste?
No.
Try it.
Okay.
You'll like it.
That was fantastic.
Okay.
So, where did you grow up again?
I grew up in Worcester. I was born in Cincinnati, Ohio.
Right.
And grew up in Worcester, Ohio, which is a town of now 30,000. It was much smaller then, where my parents, a great place to raise kids. One of those places. Had a very good growing up experience. And then I never was in New York City till I was 18 when I finished high school. And, and jump way ahead, I went to law school in Cambridge, Massachusetts, which taught me a lot because I learned about Brooks Brothers and I learned about J Press, things that I had never known.
They didn't have Brooks Brothers in Cincinnati?
Yeah. They may, I'm not sure. But anyway, I learned a lot of things.
What about, was there anything from Ohio that you missed when you got to New York? Like your cinnamon
I don't remember
chili?
any food at all, zero food from Ohio.
Yeah.
I mean, I would have trout amadine at Galatoire's in New Orleans, and I would eat that the rest of my life.
Yeah.
I would have, I would go to Joe's Stone Crab in Miami Beach.
Yeah.
You
got all the fancy spots.
Huh?
You got all the fancy spots.
Well, I was on a Newsweek expense account part of the time. But anyway, you go to Atlanta, you got to get the hot dogs at the place at Georgia Tech.
Yeah.
You got to get their hot dogs.
At what's it called?
Varsity. What?
Varsity.
Yeah, Varsity,
Yes.
exactly.
Yeah.
And then you got to have a Philly cheesesteak in Philly, and there's one place in South Philly that's famous for
Joe's or Pat's?
Pat's. Yeah,
Pat's.
That's it.
It's a very polarizing topic.
Yeah, I try to go to different places, do
Yeah.
different. In Cambridge, oddly enough, the dish I remember the most is there was a restaurant I think is just closed.
Yeah.
Called Elsie's.
Okay.
And they had a Russian dress. They had a sandwich, about a 3-layered sandwich.
Yeah.
It was a lunchtime dream sandwich. So good, so good.
I haven't spent any time in Cambridge, but I spent some time in Falmouth, Massachusetts.
Yeah.
And when I learned about seafood in Falmouth,
I mean, lobster, I would eat lobster all the time.
what about like the stuffed quahogs?
No, Chad, I'm not for the fancy. Beside lobster, I love cod.
Yeah.
I spent a week once. I was giving speeches in Newfoundland,
Okay.
and they live on cod.
Yeah.
And I have cod here every time you can possibly have it.
I love it. My wife makes fun of me. You know what I like to do with cod? This is the simplest thing. And people always make fun of me because I'm a fancy chef or whatever the perception is. I take the whole frozen cod, put it in the oven frozen with some butter on top of it and a lemon. And like when you put it in the oven, the frozen aspect of it kind of steams it and it keeps it like nice and kind of, what do they
Is
call
this
it?
already been
Toothsome.
skinned, or is it?
Yeah, skinned.
It sounds good.
put it
They
in
also have cod
but tartar
tongues.
sauce.
Cod
Cod
tongue.
tongues. Yeah, that's weird.
Yeah, I know. Well, see that, you're doing something obviously, I don't think of, and
No, I would do cod tongues. When I was learning how to butcher fish, we would do cod cheeks.
cod, yeah.
Yeah, and you have to get the cheek out, and
Yeah.
it's a very laborious task. But as long as somebody else is doing it for you, I'm happy to eat it.
It's funny, you asked me about, and I'm telling you about my food experiences, and you've had 100 times more. So, but
Well, I think that all the different experiences when you're talking about food is so unique to the individual. And there's a lot of things that you love or like just purely because of the memory associated with it, and you don't even really
well,
realize
I'm going to
that.
tell you 2 memory stories then,
Yep.
okay? One is when I was a freshman in college
Yeah.
at Northwestern, in our fraternity house, every once in a while, the cook would make corned beef hash.
Okay.
It was so terrible that the mere thought of eating corned beef hash I can't possibly. The other story is, and I may have told this to other people here, I spent a year in England on a fellowship. It included giving speeches to Rotary clubs. And I would have lunch at a Rotary club or dinner at a Rotarian's house all over England.
Yeah.
And this was 1959, 60. The war had only been over 14 years.
Wow.
The British didn't want frozen vegetables.
Yep.
The only fresh vegetable you could get in England was Brussels sprouts.
Oh.
And I had Brussels sprouts for lunch and dinner for about 6 months. And I said when I got back, I would never eat a Brussels sprout again the rest of my life, and I never have. And in fact, last night here, they served Brussels sprout, and I just looked at them.
I almost brought some out for our little
It wouldn't have
dining
mattered. I
experience
would
today.
not have
You
eaten.
wouldn't eaten them?
I've not touched a Brussels sprout in something like 80 years.
You know what the best thing
60
is?
years.
The best thing for me, so I started out as a cook in the Navy on an aircraft
Ours?
carrier. Yes, United States
The US Navy.
US Navy, on an aircraft carrier. And when we would start our missions at sea, we would have store-bought bread. So we would have, and you're cooking for all these people, like, including myself, we're all 18, 19 years
Yeah,
old.
right. I was just going to say,
Yeah. And so-
tastemakers they aren't.
No. And so we would be at sea, and we had a full bakery. And as a matter of fact, my grandpa was a baker in World War II, in the Navy as well. But we had a full bakery on this aircraft carrier. And we would go out to sea with store-bought bread, like Wonder Bread buns, and like the worst possible bread that you could have. But when we would be far enough at sea, we would have to start making it. And the displeasure and the dip in morale on the ship from having to eat fresh baked buns versus the store-bought white stuff is crazy.
I think
And I hated it too. I was like, damn, we got to eat all these homemade things
get it.
now.
Which reminds me of a story here, speaking of that. Here, here, one day, they got a bakery here.
Yeah.
One day I said to you, why is it that we can't have croissants at breakfast? You got to bake. And sure enough, croissants started turning up with hot chocolate. It was almost like, not quite like Paris, but almost like Paris.
I do.
And the other thing is, I said, how could you possibly serve lamb chops without mint jelly?
Yeah.
So you now have mint jelly here.
And that mint jelly has your name on it.
I hope so.
Because nobody else gets
I
it.
hope nobody else could ever eat it.
Mr. Jerry,
Pleasure.
thank you so much for your time. Thanks for letting me join you. Thanks for feeding me the octopus.
Okay.
We're going to
My
get you out
pleasure.
here.
Thank you very
We'll
much.
see you again soon.
Okay.
Cheers.
Yeah.